So let's talk about this Davante Adams situation because it basically came up on Tuesday and Wednesday that Davante Adams and the Las Vegas Raiders no longer want to be in a relationship together. It was reported that Antonio Pierce liked an Instagram post that basically said this is going to be Davante Adams' last game in a Raider uniform. And it's very interesting because Davante Adams right now, it's very similar to Stephon Diggs, who obviously got traded from the Bills to the Texans this offseason for a third and a fifth round pick that is reportedly, about the same price. Vegas maybe wants a second round pick for Davante Adams, who is a little bit older than Stephon Diggs by about a year. That's why people are looking at about a third round pick for the receiver, who is obviously a former Packer and soon to be a former Raider. He has played with Aaron Rodgers. We know the Jets are out there. Could you imagine him, Garrett Wilson, and Mike Williams when healthy on that Jets offense to go with Brees Hall? Certainly yet another dynamic. We know the Saints are a team who are looking very good offensively. At least they were the first two games of the season. But I do find Davante Adams in a very interesting situation. And here is why. Because we know the receiver market is exploding. We took a look at this offseason, Brandon Ayuk, CeeDee Lamb, the money that they were able to get from their respective teams. We know guys like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, and then you got guys coming up here, like a Malik Neighbors, like a Marvin Harrison Jr., a Roma Dunse, the young guys. That's not to mention other great receivers like an A.J. Brown, like a Mike Evans. It just feels like there's receivers everywhere. Not only that, but two teams that have traded away top wide receivers who are getting paid lots of money from other teams. That's Tyreek Hill in Miami. Kansas City traded them away. They won back-to-back Super Bowls. Buffalo traded away Stephon Diggs. Arguably, their offense has never looked better. Houston gets Stephon Diggs, and it's not like Diggs has been bad in Houston's offense, but Houston has not looked like the same offense, in my opinion, this year as it does a year ago. So it puts the receiver position in a very interesting aspect because about 2, 3 years ago, we were all about you get the rookie quarterback on a rookie deal, you load up, you give him 2, 3 wide receivers like Cincinnati has done with obviously Burrow, and then they had Chase, Higgins, Boyd. You give them all these weapons. Burrow can overcome the bad offensive line. They get to a Super Bowl. But I think increasingly, as more teams, like Baker Mayfield had success last year on a 1 year contract in Tampa, obviously what San Francisco has done with Brock Purdy, you take a look at it, and I think teams are starting to say, hey, listen, outside of Patrick Mahomes, if we don't have a superstar quarterback, is it worth paying the quarterback? And if we're not paying the quarterback, do we load up on the receiver? And then in a case like Buffalo, hey, we have Josh Allen. We don't need to pay a bunch of money to a great wide receiver. We have two good tight ends. We have young receivers. We have a good back. Let's spend more money on the defensive side of the ball, as obviously defense seems to be making a little bit of a comeback in the National Football League. Defensive coordinators starting to catch on to this cheat motion and the modern day offenses in the NFL. And let's, run the ball, play good defense, get the ball out short, quick passes. We need to spread the ball around. And as Josh Allen said right after the Jacksonville game, we're not going to need to feed egos because these number one receivers, they do have a lot of egos. They get frustrated when they don't get the ball in their hands early, and it can be a detriment to their team. So I think there's two sides to every issue. Now, in the case of Davante Adams, obviously he's getting older, and I talked about this before the year when it came to the Raiders. You can make an argument. They have Jacoby Myers, they have Michael Mayer, they have Brock Bowers, they have that Tucker kid that came on the last week. You got Madison and White out of the backfield. They don't really need Davante Adams. What they need is a quarterback. They need to move on from Gardner Minshew, who's a nice bridge, gonna win you 6, 7 games. Aiden O'Connell isn't anything special in my opinion. He's more of a backup. I mean, take this league no further than when Aiden O'Connell didn't complete a pass at the end of the first quarter in that Christmas game last year, and they were able to knock off Kansas City. So Davante's in a very interesting situation. He's getting a little bit older. He has not been as productive in Vegas as he was in Green Bay. And again, part of that may be because of the quarterback situation he's in. We know the relationship Aaron Rodgers has with him. So it does seem like the Jets are the likely spot. Again, I said it yesterday on the show. I feel like Hassan Reddick for Davante Adams trade would make all the sense in the world. Hassan Reddick would go to Vegas, pair up with Max Crosby. You would have Christian Wilkins there. You would be compatible with, the likes of the New York Giants, believe it or not, San Francisco, the Jets, Philadelphia, one of the best defensive lines in football. And I think that would help take pressure of what is the weakest part of the Vegas defense, which is their secondary. And for the Jets, you get Davante Adams, who has that chemistry with Aaron Rodgers. He will be a great mentor for Garrett Wilson, in my opinion, the way Jordy Nelson and Donald Driver were essentially great mentors for Davante Adams. And we know what Davante Adams came into, and we know Davante Adams is one of the best route runners we've ever seen. He doesn't even need to use his hands. He generally, obviously, uses his feet. So a lot of interesting things there. The Saints to me are interesting because while they do have Alvin Kamara, um, and they do have Chris Olave, they don't have a lot of other targets, obviously. You have Derek Carr, who we all know went to Fresno State with Davante Adams. We all know the relationship that that Derek Carr and Davante Adams have. But think about it, right? The Saints started 2-0. If they collapse here, they lose to Kansas City Monday night. They're 2-3. They're not in the NFC South picture. They go back to what I thought they were going to be. Going into the year, was a pretty bad football team with a lot of old, expensive players on defense, and they need to get younger. What would Davante Adams do for that team if, Dennis Allen gets fired, Derek Carr potentially leaves the team at the end of the year? So I don't know if that is the right fit for Davante Adams because, in my opinion, Spencer Rattler may be the future of that organization. There's a lot of talks out there about Buffalo. I think there's a reason why they got rid of Stephon Diggs, as I just talked about. They want to make the offense more Josh Allen centric, less, wide receiver number one dependent. I think they're thinking we don't need Davante Adams. Dallas is obviously checked in, as I've talked about. They're very CD Lamb dependent, and without a run game, that's where it makes sense to add Davante Adams. Though again, at 32 years old, don't know if Jerry Jones is going to pull the trigger on that. Are you willing to pay Davante Adams and CeeDee Lamb and Dak and Micah Parsons? You would essentially handicap your offensive line, the rest of your defensive line. Maybe you have to get rid of a secondary player in a DeMarcus Lawrence or a Trayvon Diggs or a Deron Bland. So that's interesting. Um, I think with Aaron Rodgers only being there a year or two, and the Jets obviously knowing that they have to win a Super Bowl, or otherwise this investment for Aaron Rodgers, in my opinion, is going to be a bust. If I'm the Jets and the Raiders, again, I think the Hassan Reddick, Davante Adams, and maybe an additional third round or fourth round pick make the best sense for both sides. I would try to get Davante Adams there to the Jets before Halloween. And again, Brees Hall, Davante Adams, Garrett Wilson. I think if anybody will make that work, it is Aaron Rodgers, because right now, without Garrett Wilson, and Aaron Rodgers obviously wants to throw the football, but if you roll the coverage towards Garrett Wilson, you don't trust Allen Lazard, and Mike Williams is never healthy, which is the issue. Davante Adams, even though he's got a little bit of an hamstring issue right now, has mostly stayed healthy throughout his career. So I love that fit for him and the Jets. I think it would certainly make the Jets a better football team, and I think it would work out for both sides. Like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World podcast right here on YouTube.